It is time to engage. Okay, we are back for week 4, which is an interesting one because we don't have an Orville this week. Mm-hmm. We're all Discovery today, but I think we'll still be finding ways to sort of bring this around to comparison to the Orville because there's a lot of comparison to be done in this episode. This is Obol for Charon, which is an interesting Discovery name. It's very academic. It goes back to Greek mythology. It's like basically the money you give the ferryman to take you to the underworld. An Obol for Charon. So walking into this episode, guys, it was kind of clear death was going to have something to do with it. Yeah. So Vanya, Sonia, what did you think about the way this episode started? Because it was like an 8 or 9 minute hook. It took a while to get to the Discovery credits. And that's a thing this season. They're really leaning into Act 1 late.
The cold opens, like, really... The cold opens are better, though.
Yeah. I mean, if it was just, hey, number 1, how are you? And then they got into it, it would have been a little less hooked.
Yeah. The last season, remember, they had that issue of, like, they thought it was like this big hook, and then we were like, but we know what it is. So I think it's been better. I think it's been better, and it did take a really long time. Yeah, I felt like I was like, oh yeah, it's starting now.
Sonia, what did you think about like a quarter of the episode going by before the credits actually started?
It was fine.
It was okay with you?
Yeah. It was fine. It wasn't the thing that stood out for me.
No? Okay.
In the episode. Yeah.
Did you think that it was going to be a joke that people were sick this time around? Because, like, bug-eyed fun dude that now gets to hang out on our on the set. Linus. Yeah. But I wonder what the translation of Linus is. Now that we know everything is translated, I wonder if Linus has like a clicky poppy name as well.
Yeah.
But totally. I feel like did you think we were going to be leaning into humor around Saru being sick?
No.
No?
I thought maybe that moment. I was expecting a little bit more humor in that moment, but I didn't. No,
with his like salty tea.
Yes, that was kind of humorous actually.
Yeah, because they brought a whole bottle of salt in.
Yes. Yeah. No, I didn't think that. Can you remind me at which point? What happened right before they went to the credits? Was it Saru being sick? I can't remember.
It was. I believe they had gone as far as. Here's this horrible thing that has trapped us. There's the spider in the web. Like they had planted everything for that episode. Yeah. Like that is not the usual thing you get out of a Star Trek episode unless they're planning on really cramming a lot into it.
And it does make sense because they did. They cracked like
that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, that's what you want to talk about. I know that feeling because I felt like. Oh, this is almost 2 episodes.
Which is interesting because we were talking about, the last week episode, how it didn't end, it just stopped.
Yes.
And this episode kind of just picked right back up and reminded us that they did not go to sickbay for this thing that was happening to Tilly. That everyone was talking about it, but it wasn't a big first contact procedure.
Yeah.
Because off the top of this episode, we were basically just getting a bunch of retcon apologies where Rebecca Romaine shows up as number 1 and we start going into the retcons where it's like, get rid of the holographic thing because apparently that's causing problems.
Yeah. Yes.
And the funny thing about this is, by the time we catch up with Pike in Menagerie, he's become fleet captain. Which means whatever opinions Pike has will have a far-reaching sort of grab. He can change things across the fleet.
Yes.
So if he happens to like a screen, guess what? We all got screens now. If he happens to dislike anything holographic, it's out.
Yes.
So they've really done something here to try to apologize for the horrible, terrible, like unforgivable mistakes of season 1's canon errors.
Mm. And I thought they were going to apologize. They were going to do something about the mycelial network, but they didn't.
But I feel like they're.
It's interesting.
I feel like they're leaning into. I'm sure we'll get to it, but no, I feel like they're leaning into that direction. Like, I think a few things have changed. I feel like even the way the ship, everything looks is brighter. Mm. And I know you guys don't like uniforms, but all of a sudden this episode I was like, the light was brighter and I was like, I like these uniforms even more than I did before.
Because I'm like, are they shinier still?
Yeah, they're shiny and smooth, and I'm just like the collars. I can see the definition of the collar and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I like them more.
Wow.
It's just
All
the boots I don't like. It's the boots on top of
The shoes look dumb.
the shoes.
The shoes look dumb.
But otherwise, I like.
Okay, I'll give you this.
Yeah, until we get like boots up to here and flaring out 60s below the knee, I won't be happy.
They look a little rain booty, but the top and jacket. I mean, the top and pants, I'm still into. Anyway.
Except I just want to say one thing. Going back to the first episode, Pike had the yellow.
Yeah,
Because
and it was the
came
new
over from-
uniforms.
He
And
just came over from the
And I
Enterprise.
gotta say,
New
either
uniform or what?
they're really, really not that new, because his profile pic on his Tinder page that came up still had him in the yellow. So they must like update those right away, or they're not as new as we're led to believe they are.
Right,
You know, it's
okay.
like he took the picture just before he beamed over.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep that updated all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it was interesting talking about uniforms and clothing. We got to see a whole lot of like naked Saru.
Yes, we
which
did.
was an interesting.
So much of his body.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing. It's like when we saw Dax had the spots all the way down.
to
You're
her
like,
feet. Yeah,
all
I
right,
was like, oh.
curious.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was like Kelpian physiology is funky and neat
Yes.
and like thoughtful. And I wonder what Doug Jones thinks about being in that outfit versus being in like the Fishman outfit from Shape of Water,
Right.
because he gets into full body outfits to be a monster frequently.
I think that probably the helpful thing about this one is that he's like his bottom half is covered up and he gets to sit like in that, so it's probably not as precarious where he has to use his whole body
all the way down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Doug Jones and the fact that this episode really let you know that in Star Trek now characters can die, and I for one was kind of expecting him to die.
Me
What about
too.
you guys?
No,
No?
I thought they'd save him in the end. I would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought they'd save him in the end.
I really thought,
And
are
the
they
reason-
doing this and how did they cover up?
And the reason is because I didn't think they'd actually get Michael to do it.
Interesting.
I just for some reason it didn't seem like it was gonna happen. Like they're not gonna have Michael kill Saru, even if he really wants her to. And it's a great moment between them. I just thought that's not gonna happen on Star Trek. But
What did you think?
that was
Well, I thought he were gonna fall through with she was gonna fall through with it, and I really thought they were gonna kill him. And I thought, how did they keep it from everybody that he's leaving the show? I'm like, how is that possible? He's such an integral character, and it reminded me of what's it called? Ethics. Is that from TNG when Worf is paralyzed and he gets Riker?
Yeah.
I mean, they are almost like Riker and her have the same rank. And, it's pretty cool. Like the comparison was really, really cool, and it's a cultural thing, and a knife is involved, and I was like, wow, you're just like going
Just
through
cribbing
that.
that one.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that, but I actually thought that was really cool. Like I like that comparison. But I thought this time, even though we saved Worf, maybe this time they're really gonna do it.
Well, the thing for me that made me think that Doug Jones was going to leave the show was that he was originally contracted for 1 season.
Right.
This show was not supposed to go more than 1 season with this cast. And then they signed him on for 6 more seasons. So he was on this show after the fact as a 7-year thing. But it is a time-consuming thing to shoot an entire series. And he's getting into a whole lot of makeup for it, and he's a film actor. And so I was thinking, like, inside baseball on this, that maybe he wanted out. And so I was like, okay, this is the way to do it. And I was genuinely certain Saru was going to die. It was also awkward because you're like, is he going to be the captain? There's 2 commanders. Why is he even around anymore?
Right.
You could just smoke Saru and the ship would work just fine.
Yeah, because when number 1 comes over, I thought, oh, is this an opportunity for him to leave and for her to
And then
stick
you've just
around?
got dozens of commanders on the bridge, and it's just like too many commanders. Yeah.
It should be called Commanders.
Yeah. Absolutely. Star Trek commanders. Can they all get along? They like voting each other off the
Can they
ship.
all get along?
Yeah.
he's the only empath. He's the only really empathic one.
And this is the first time we're really hearing
What
about
is
it.
that about?
Yeah, and I thought that was an awkward line. I found the writing in this episode.
There was a lot of
That stood out for me too.
There's a lot of seat of your pants flying happening in this episode. The fact that Saru and Michael in episode 3 of the first season, Saru was not having it. He did not want Michael around. He was ready to toss her out an airlock. He did not care about her. Yes. And here we are, 20 hours later, and they're brother and sister. It's the closest thing ever. And I mean, when you've got a sibling, you can have rifts like that. But I never got the feeling from any point in this show ever that they were that close.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I think there was a switch in the last season that I remember in the later episodes that I feel like they did have a switch where there was like a camaraderie there. And
so you feel like that like kicked in?
Yeah,
it's not like it's not 10 years old that they've been together all this time. It's like they have this feeling and it's fresh in the last 6 months.
I think when they're on the Shinzo, they had a relationship that was kind of cold but like could have built, but then it got interrupted, and they've like tried to get rid of that stuff in the middle and catch up to where they were maybe before. Like it's added, right? It's cumulative.
What did you think, Sonia? Do you think that relationship was true, or did it feel like it was built so that episode would work?
What I remember about the last few episodes of last season is not that. So, but I could just have not noticed it. It maybe it was just the writing, Matt, the way that they explored it in this episode that made it seem fake.
Yeah.
That made it seem that they were trying too hard to show that. I personally think that a lot of the intimate interactions, and even if just between friends and co-workers, it's too wordy. I wish they were spare in the way that people communicated their affection and their,
I agree with that. Or spare in what they put into an episode. Do you know what I mean? So that you have time to have those conversations, right? If we're talking about how we're talking about this is more than one episode in an episode, when you look at ethics from TNG, that's a whole episode of Worf and that decision and where that's going. That's one episode. All the other stuff in this episode, if you take that, if that was gone, then maybe this would be like an even better episode, because if you take out the Tilly stuff, and that's a separate episode.
Yeah, that was enough meat for a whole episode.
There's two complete episodes. So then you would have those conversations, and they've been in the shit a couple times, and maybe they need to have like together work on a couple more things, so that they're adversarial. Like when you get to the point where you're doing ethics with Worf and Riker, you don't see them alone all the time, but that Riker understands Klingons. That he's connected to that culture. He respects that culture, and what they've been through together. So it's different, right?
I wonder if it's the serialized nature. It's so seriously serialized. Because there were other Star Trek shows that had ongoing storylines, and yet they feel like they managed this serial aspects of the characters' lives and the ad hoc events or the Trek events. I feel like they balance them better, because in this episode we had two things that were carried over for sure: finding Spock, getting to Spock, and the Tilly and mycelial situation. Then they added Saru, almost dying, and can we talk about the best Trekkie story in this thing? This huge entity that has
Star Trek 4, you mean? When Star Trek 4?
Right. This entity that has, according to Captain Pike, it's their version of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I'm thinking, what could they have done with that story?
That's a whole episode.
Other amazing episode.
Yes.
Yeah, you could probably have 3 episodes.
And on the topic of this being so wordy, do you remember in The Brightest Star, that short trek that was about the Kelpians? Is there a single part of that short film that was not rehashed verbally in this episode? If this is going to be serialized, don't tell us things twice.
Right.
Or in the recap in the opening, show us a bit of that. You don't need to describe your sister's relationship, the thing with the bad Kelpian, like the predator race. You don't need to tell us every single thing that happened in the short film, or you didn't need to make that short film.
They had the same challenge in the first season. With the doubling up on things. Remember, speaking of cold opens, we know all the information, and then they would have something happen and, the crew's freaked out, but we know not to be freaked out.
Yeah.
So then when the Admiral came over and, she was all like guns blazing, and I was just like, yeah, if that was more of a mystery and it wasn't like everybody that is there, we know all the answers to it, then you don't have to like double up on
You're
the
making
attention.
the show for us, not for yourselves.
Yeah, it's not. You don't have to tell the characters. The characters don't need to learn from. We just need the information. They don't need all that. Just jump to the next thing.
Yes. We did talk about this a lot.
Yeah, so it's kind of back. Like it's like a virus.
That problem's still here. No matter how many showrunners they fire, they still have this problem.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about Star Trek 4. Because there were a few Star Trek 4 moments in this episode, from drilling people's heads to, it's trying to talk to us. This has never happened before.
Matt, tell me the name of Star Trek 4 again.
The Voyage Home.
Yes, know the movies.
Sorry, I just
you
numbered them.
You probably do too.
The Voyage Home, which is like the most popular Star Trek movie ever made, because it's funny and people just enjoyed the lack of being in space the whole time. Like, you're in San Francisco in the 80s. Like, it made for fun television watching, and it was great in the theater. But then afterwards, it had a lot of play on television, and people would get into that and double dumbass on you. Like, there was a lot of fun, quotable moments in there. And one of the key moments there's the hello computer moment where Scotty is trying to talk to a Mac by talking into the microphone.
Okay.
Because he doesn't understand how to interact with machines. And the funny thing is, you take a look at the way all the technology on the Discovery works and how much of it is ripped out by the time we get to the cage. Because when you get on a turbo lift, you don't tell it what floor you're going to.
Right.
You crank the thing, and it takes you to where you're going. Yeah. And it takes 100 years for Riker to then go on there and say deck 4.
Right.
And so all the technology that's happening in Discovery gets removed and then reinvented in 100 years, because there was that moment in this where Saru said you wouldn't even be able to talk to the turbo lift.
Yeah.
That Tower of Babel moment.
Yeah, I really love that. That was exciting and really fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Very, very fun.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that I was like, I don't understand this.
Turns out Pike is French.
No, he's not necessarily, because he speaks
we're French?
He speaks German.
But he also speaks French?
He speaks French.
Italian?
He speaks German.
Speak Italian?
So what are they cycling through? Like, when they're cycling through these languages, because
Chinese?
they're speaking languages that they don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because Detmer says,
Is that
it says
Arabic?
Andorian, and she says, what am I speaking, Arabic?
Yeah.
And then, the other guy's speaking Welsh, and there's Norwegian. So what I didn't understand is, okay, the universal translator's on all the time, I guess, and they're all maybe speaking different languages.
Well, the thing Gene Roddenberry once said is that there's a universal translator in your television. And that's why you can watch this show.
Right.
And so it was the idea that you're, as a viewer, always enjoying the universal translator, and the people who are talking don't necessarily know you can understand them because your television has one.
Yes.
So,
very clever, Mr.
Yeah, it's very fun. I think that's a super fun way to explain it. But the idea that everyone's universal translators on the fritz, are they each having a personal experience of being confused by what they're speaking, or is this a global experience? That wasn't really clear.
Well, because it's been, if it's the way that they are doing it, then it's been retconned, because there's an old the original Star Trek where there's an entity or something that comes and they all get a message at the same time, and Chekhov says, "Oh my God, Russian," like old Russian, and then Sulu says, "No, I heard Japanese," and Uhura says, "No, I heard Swahili," because those are their languages.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, on original Star Trek, they're all speaking like a universal English
Federation
language,
standard?
They're to each other, and that's why they were freaked out in that episode when they heard their own languages to them.
From the
but
entity.
in this universe, the universal translators on all the time, and they're speaking their own language, because that's set up when Linus in the boardroom says, "Oh, sometimes the translation doesn't catch up." So that was the setup for the rest of it. Mm-hmm. Because when Saru comes on, when she calls him, she's speaking Mandarin, and he speaks Mandarin back to her, and then she speaks Spanish, and then he speaks Spanish back to her. And you're like, yeah, we know that Saru speaks multiple languages, 94. but then when she's speaking the language and it's switching,
how does he know?
Yeah, like,
how does she know?
Is she understanding him in Mandarin or in Spanish?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It was a really fun gag, executed very clumsily, but it was entertaining to watch.
But it's cool. It's cool. I can let go of it. I mean, I've been ignoring the Universal Translator for, like, how many shows now?
And, Discovery was ignoring the Universal Translator for the entire opening sequence and Klingon of season
also
1.
changed because we also know there's a Universal Translator in her communicator.
In the
tricorder, because she's used it when she was on the Klingon ship to translate back into English.
They call it Earth English. They didn't.
The Earth English and Federation Standard. I would love to know what the difference is.
Yeah.
I mean, and how much non-Earth English is there out there?
Yeah.
It's like Romulan English, a very different kind of English, I guess.
Or it was brought to my attention too that on Earth there's hundreds of languages, but in every other planet
there's
just only
Klingon.
Vulcan.
Yeah.
Only Klingon.
Yeah.
But there's not like multiple Klingons.
Yeah, they've got that figured out, I guess. Although maybe the Klingons that speak this like clumsy through their mouth prosthetics, maybe that's a different language of Klingon.
Oh.
Maybe, because they've got clumsier mouths. So let's clumsy Klingon. I come from the clumsy. I come from the clumsy colony of Klingon. So let's talk about the sort of Tig Notaro scenes. Those beautiful scenes. I mean, on the topic of Star Trek IV and the idea that McCoy said it is barbaric to drill into a man's head what's wrong with you in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And now, 10 years, 20 years before that scenario happens to McCoy, Tig Notaro, who, granted, her character is not a medical professional. Mm-hmm. No one involved in this entire scenario has any medical knowledge. Right? They are vegetable experts and technology experts. They decide the best thing to do is to drill here-ish into someone's head to install something, to be directly in a cortical connection.
That's right.
This troubled me.
Yeah.
Because, like I said last week, it's like, we're just going to pull this thing out of Tilly, and it's going to be painful. Let's not think of any ways where it can't be painful.
Yeah.
Let's not call the doctor and say, there's an issue.
Or, bring in everyone necessary for a first contact procedure.
It's just getting weird in engineering. I keep forgetting that it's engineering.
Yeah.
It's just mushrooms. Yeah, this is engineering. You know what I mean? This is not a place where it's not Stamets' Frankenstein lab.
This is the actual engineering. And they have two of them, right? There's a backup engineering, and there's also that forest arboretum where they grow the spores that we have not seen since the first time we saw it.
Yeah.
They have never had a reason to go back in there.
And so, we talk about competency porn a lot about Star Trek, and I know they were locked in there. Remember, they're locked in there, and I get that. But they should send a team that is working to get it unlocked.
Someone should be involved in opening that door.
They drill into Tilly's head.
Yeah. They should be focusing. That's engineering. That's a very vital part of the ship. They should be focusing on how to get that open.
Because the reasoning was...
Not just because Tilly, but because it's engineering.
Yeah, and the reasoning was... If we breathe, something could trigger an explosion in here, and I thought, what
there
would
was
our
too much
experience...
oxygen, it was flammable.
So what would our experience as viewers been if they hadn't told us that and they just tried to get it open? Do you know what I mean? They make strange scientific choices as well for the audience.
Well, they're trying to isolate them, right? They're trying to keep it isolated, but then there should be people outside the door trying to get.
And it would have been a good place for any doctor to be like, this is how you do brain surgery.
Yes, yeah.
Or use a site-to-site transport to give them a laser scalpel. Anything to not have to use a drill bit in a human's brain in the 22nd century.
Yeah, and the fact they really jumped to doing things to people's bodies in this show without the doctor all the time.
Yeah.
We now know there's a doctor. She keeps...
popping up every now and again.
She's always there.
Yeah.
For Saru.
I mean...
Yeah.
For Saru. She's in the Saru storyline, but she wasn't in Tilly's. When Tilly gets that arm...
Yeah.
I mean, they should be consulting her immediately. If something's on... I was thinking about... there's an episode of Voyager where Torres has something that's attached to her.
Yes.
Everybody knows about it. she's in sick bay. Well, it happens in sick bay, so lucky them. But, you know, but
really
then first of all, the whole episode is this.
Because
it's focused on B'Elanna the entire episode.
It's nice to have 22 episodes to fill in a season, I guess.
Yeah, but
but still, Matt, that would still be 13 episodes. Would still be better if they were spare in the number of storylines.
Yep.
You know,
if you tried packing it,
we would get so much more if they fleshed out some of these storylines. I would have loved to have met Spock. I would love I want to see Michael and Spock together on screen soon, right? Yeah. I want to know what that entity told them. What does this 100,000-year-old thing in space have to tell us? My God.
And it's just like glossed right over because there are so many other plots happening and so many other themes being like jammed into this part and that moment when Stamets is arguing is giving a climate change argument, essentially.
Yeah, that's what it
and
is.
like, wouldn't it be great if there was an episode about that?
Yeah.
But no, there are two scenes about that. One in the middle and one at the end, where Stamets.
I forgot about May and the climate change accusation.
Yeah, and this whole idea that you know, mining for dilithium crystals is fracking for fuel, basically.
Right, yeah.
And this idea that you're destroying the universe planet by planet to get this resource you need. And then, you know, Tig's character is talking about how it was an essential thing that we needed to be able to go through the galaxy and screw your stupid mushrooms and salad.
Yeah.
And then when we get to the end, we sort of get to button that idea with the concept that Stamets doesn't understand the damage his technology is doing. And so it's more than just yelling at people who like fossil fuels. There's an extra layer to this of discussing people who love solar panels. Like, solar panels have a huge, brutal manufacturing off-gassing that happens.
Yes.
And the idea that, great, you've got a solar panel, or great, you drive a Prius, but your Prius came from Japan, and it was on a slow boat, and, like, there are so many layers to
it's a whole episode. We've just identified, like, 4 or 5 episodes
and 2 scenes
in this one
this got
episode.
2 scenes.
Yep. You know, if that shows promise, right? Like, what we're trying to tell you is it's promise, you know, but you can put those, you don't have to, just because you only have 13 episodes, you made these shorts. Why'd you make these shorts? You know what I mean? About nothing. When you could have gave off some of those to the shorts, like some of the stuff.
Imagine.
Or save it for another season. Make it a cleaner season and do the themes that you want to do in later seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that there are 7 signals and we need to see one every other episode minimum to get to the end of this storyline inside of 13 episodes.
Yes.
They are jam-packing so much into here. Like, this was 3 genuinely good Star Trek episodes that could have happened separately.
Which we've identified B plots.
Yeah.
You know, within those episodes that you're saying, you know, I just, like, and then I find myself distracted by things, you know, because I'm just like, there's so much stuff that I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a good line, I'm uninsultable, I'm like, great line, and then, you know, number 1's habanero sauce, I'm like, the whole bottle? Anyway.
And then she doesn't drink, she doesn't get the milkshake. I was hoping she'd get the milkshake.
Me too. But she has the biggest bottle of habanero sauce anyway.
And it was, the Replimat made it just for her. She must use all of it. It's not like she's gonna give it back.
Well, I guess she can put it back.
And then it gets
back for the next time that she wants.
Habanero
It's interesting that she came over from the Enterprise just to have a hamburger.
Yeah. maybe the Enterprise's hamburgers just don't measure up in space dock, but
and the Enterprise is up there, isn't it? Isn't it just kind of hanging around?
It's in space dock getting fixed from the last time Pike broke a ship, and so they gave him a more expensive ship to break.
And so I'm being facetious, but still, like, there's so many episodes here. Make it tighter around, you know, a smaller amount of themes, because they think what they thought they were trying to do, in my opinion, is connect the entity to the Tilly thing. You know what I mean? I think they tried to like say, these are two entities that are attached to important things, a human and a ship, and they're both making mistakes. They both want something that, you know, that's the way I tied it together. You know, I shouldn't have to do all this work. Anyway.
No,
but it's
your
like,
A plot of, oh my god, Star Trek 4, and your B plot of, oh my god, Worf's spine, you put those into one episode, and you've got yourself a tight episode.
Oh, well, yeah, but then you have, like, okay.
What are you going to do with Tilly?
The Tilly B'Elanna, like, and attached, you know, like, that kind of connects to the Star Trek 4
So it's
thing.
2 episodes and 1 feature film jammed into 48 minutes.
Yeah.
No, it was,
that's a little much.
Frustrating. It's very frustrating.
It's a little much.
But the promise is that each one of those, I want to see each one of those episodes. That's what's frustrating about it, is that I want to see the Saru episode, I want to see the Tilly episode, and I want to see the Entity one.
Mm-hmm. And let's get Spock.
And
like,
Spock.
there's the D, like, there are so many things.
The Spock thing reminds me, I keep forgetting about it because it reminds me of season 1 of the show, where it was just like there was this hidden mystery that just keeps on trying to reveal it, and it's like, listen, sometimes it's better to just reveal it. Just give us what we want. Yeah. You know what I mean? And stop fooling around, because it's
just
like,
telling us what we want doesn't consume all the drama, all the excitement for us. There's just so much more you can show us.
Exactly, but it's like this carrot.
And we've already seen images of Spock in his beard. Like, we're gonna get there. You're not like hiding it.
There's pictures out
there.
There's pictures out there.
We've seen it. It's
in the real world.
Out in the world, yeah. So like, we know we're gonna get to this, and so drawing it out is just not working as a viewer.
You know what drawing it out is gonna do? It's gonna make us be like, that's it, right?
Yeah. You are really teeing up something that had better be a home run.
Exactly. Yeah. We know who he is.
Yes, that's right.
You know what I mean? Like, we know what we think he should be like. He's not, you know, and so it's kind of like, if they hold, if it's not awesome, if his like entry is not so awesome, we're gonna be like, that was it. That's what we waited 13 episodes, 10 episodes for that. You're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, it better be great, Kurtzman. Better be so
they're
good.
really setting themselves up to fail. Like, really, if they had just revealed Spock a long time ago now, then, and it was just like, and he was just there, we would have been, surprised at how quickly he got there, and then we would have been able to enjoy more Spock.
The only Spock-related surprise that actually worked for me was that, like, over-the-ear shot they did in the first episode when Pike and his crew came over, because you saw 3 people were beaming in. You saw one person was wearing blue, had dark hair, had light skin, and it was an over-the-ear shot, and it was a rounded ear.
Yes.
And you were like, oh,
it's not
great. Yeah. And you were supposed to really pay attention to that foreground ear.
And that's good. I feel like that's a good little device. But then we still have to see him quicker. Yeah. Like, because it was just like this Tyler thing where,
and it's not making Peck's job any easier. Like,
they're destroying him.
When poor third Spock shows up, we are going to have such expectation.
Yeah.
And they're also presenting things about Spock that are very different from what we know, right? Yes. So connect us to him quickly, because you're already discombobulating us.
Yeah, and you're really laying in with Spock's mom and Spock's brother and baby Spock, and like, we're really getting so much about Spock without having Spock.
Reveals need to be something that people don't get tired of wanting it to be revealed before it is. Like, they have to happen in a surprising. It's like Walking Dead, for instance. This is a spoiler. If you
okay, Walking Dead spoilers coming up. Here you go.
So it's like season 2 of Walking Dead spoiler.
Oh, if you need a spoiler alert for season 2, I'm sorry, but you've arrived via time
everyone
machine.
Complained. Yeah, exactly. Everybody complained about that season. It was so slow. Nothing was happening.
But if you binge it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good. But what's her face was missing. I can't remember the kid's name.
Oh yeah.
Anyhow, the kid was missing, and it was this thing where it's like, are we ever gonna find her? Some people had already given up, and everybody's just like, nothing's happening. They're just at this farm the entire time. But man, was the payoff big.
That's true.
You know what I mean? When you finally find out that she's been in the barn the entire friggin' time.
So Spock better be a zombie in the bridge.
But I'm just saying, sorry. But then it's like, the drama that even in that episode that leads up to that,
it was
all of a sudden it's just like, oh, why did, and then and you want your audience to feel almost stupid, be like,
of course,
how could I not have known this? How could I not have known?
As opposed to far too smart, which is what we all felt like when the Vok Tyler thing was happening.
And it happened, and we were like, well, we knew this was coming because we've been talking about it for many episodes. That's not cool. You know what I mean?
Your surprise should be surprising. And it is going to make it even harder for Peck to play this new bearded Spock.
I guess not for people who don't know Star Trek. For people who, if they're trying to get new fans, it's not gonna. Their new fans aren't gonna care. You know what I mean? They don't. You know, when JJ did the Star Trek and Zachary Quinto probably had the hardest job. Like, I actually think out of any of the characters, probably Spock he's one of the most beloved. Yeah. You know, because you know, Shatner, like, he sometimes can rub people the wrong way, and even Kirk can rub people the wrong way because he's very arrogant. I love him,
but everybody loves Spock.
But everybody has this like real love for Spock.
Yes.
And so I think they did a smart thing. I mean, you know, Leonard Nimoy
was helpful,
and they were always like together. They did a lot of press together where he was like, they
even did Audi commercials.
That's
together.
Exactly. And he was just like, you know, I approve of him as Spock, and his wife, you know, Leonard Nimoy's wife was saying he's just like him when he was younger. You know what I mean? And so, but Peck doesn't have that. He doesn't have anybody that's like there to say.
Not even his grandfather.
Right? Around. To say he's so great, you know? And because there's not a lot of alum, you know, connected to the show, you know, to even say, like, oh, you know, he's like Leonard or whatever. In any way, they're really distancing themselves. And then it's really not for people that know Spock necessarily.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where they take it from here, because now they're hot on Spock's trail, and hopefully another red thing doesn't confuse them. But let's talk about this episode specifically as Star Trek. We've talked about all of the episodes it's like, and it is like a lot of movies and like they cribbed Star Trek-ish elements from all over the place.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, they broke Star Trek canon in a lot of different places, and then tried to fix broken Star Trek canon in a bunch of spaces. So, Vanya, would you say this episode was Trek?
Oh, no.
Did it Trek it or wreck it? What do you think?
I'm thinking about this a lot. Oh, my God. I'm going to say it wrecked it.
Okay. Explain.
It's very hard for me to do.
Because this is not your MO. That's right. You are usually very forgiving. I'd like to hear this.
There's just, I think it's because it's too packed. And I wanted to be in a world where I'm watching Saru's story or watching the Entity story. And it's like, if we're going to talk about science too, then you can't just have this Entity story and then skip over the science stuff, like the stuff that we want to learn about why this big thing was there, you know, that gave 100,000 years of information. So, you know, it's playing out more like a soap opera than like a show where you wanted to have Discovery, and the show is called Discovery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's very little Discovery.
I feel like, you know, they're getting on the cusp of Discovery and then just kind of like, you know, just letting it.
It's fall. Like Spock Pursuit.
Yeah, it just falls to the wayside. You know, but that's part of the fun. I mean, it's very exciting when, you know, you're watching Tilly and Reno and Stamets and they're trying to come up with a plan and they're using science to do that. And, you know, you see.
And they're having philosophical arguments.
Yeah, and usually for me, I check off all those boxes and be like, it Trekked it. But I was so frustrated with all not even just canon, but just watching them not be competent in so many different areas that it made it hard for me to see it as Star Trek the kind of Star Trek I like.
Okay.
And so I said,
What do you think? Trekked
exactly
it or wrecked
what
it?
I was thinking. Wrecked it.
Yeah?
Wrecked it. I was really frustrated. My experience as a Star Trek lover watching this episode was nothing short. Just one disappointment after another. I thought, okay, I know which way you could go with this because I've seen you do it hundreds of times. And they didn't. They didn't go further. They didn't go the right way. I thought the writing fell short in certain moments that could be so beautiful between, concerning the camaraderie between people on a Star Trek in Starfleet. Too many disappointments for me.
They didn't take their time.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I think it wrecked it. And it is a difficult choice because it tries desperately to be Star Trek. It's like when people write fan fiction and they're not quite getting it right, but they're twisting it into the thing they want it to be.
Yes.
This felt like Star Trek fan fiction, which is why it's hard to say it wrecked it. Because it's desperately trying to be Star Trek. In a way, first season was desperately trying to not be Star Trek.
Exactly.
And so this is a different kind of wreck it than I usually...
Yeah, that's right, because they fixed certain things.
You know what? It's not even a bad... To me, it's not even a bad episode, because we've already determined on this show that a good episode can wreck it, and a bad episode could wreck it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about if it's even good or not. It's more about, is
it Star Trek?
Is it Star Trek? And the fact that I feel like they're not taking their time with things, and the story or what they want to tell, the story that they want to tell is being lost somehow.
Yeah.
And that's what's frustrating.
And maybe it's extra disappointing because they did get rid of the gore, which really bothered us the first season. All that.
In the previous season, in the previous episode, in Point of Light, when you get all that Klingon girth.
But that isn't normal. That isn't typical in this season, which is great. We have a great new captain.
Yeah.
I really like Pike.
I'm enjoying Pike immensely.
Same as me.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more of their time together, So there's so much here that we really wanted during the first season that we didn't get.
I feel like
yet especially at the end. Especially at the end, guys.
This engineering storyline that has now been going on for 2 episodes, pretty much removed from everything else happening in the ship, is problematic.
It's kind of like, what do you want us to focus on? Because do you want us to kind of I felt like I had to keep putting parts of the episode aside, and I realize we're looking at different kinds of Star Trek, and I realize I'm nickel and diming a lot of things too. Like, I'm being very difficult. I'm being hard on the show because if you're going to decide that you want to be a different kind of Star Trek, you're not going to be an episodic Star Trek, you're going to be a binge watching Star Trek.
You should probably not be coming out weekly.
First of all, don't come out weekly. Just bring it all out at once, and we won't notice as much. 1 and 2, maybe then you have to tell a stronger. Your big arc has to be the strongest thing in the episode, and it has to dominate the episode.
That's what I was thinking. Discovery producers, pick something. Pick one thing.
You know what? They're in a way, even though they're making these mistakes, they're playing it safe because they don't have the guts, kind of, to say, we're going to do this one thing and we're going to ride it out all the way through 13 episodes, solid writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is our theme.
Because this episode was 2 story arcs and an episodic plot all happening at once. Having the Star Trek 4 episodic plot happening. And having Tilly was doing this before, Tilly's doing something at the end of it. That's an arc that's continuing.
Yes.
We were chasing Spock, we're still chasing Spock. That's an arc that's continuing. And the only thing that began, middled, and ended was, hey, look, this round thing. Yeah. And that was the only story that mattered to the episode. But this arc is just weighing it all down. And
as a result, the main thing with the one episode, it was suffered, right? Because it couldn't complete itself even fully. And at first, remember there was a couple episodes we did ago where we talked about how we thought that the Spock thing and the Tilly thing and the Mycelium Network and all that was we're like, like the angel thing and the ghost thing and and we're like, those two things are the same. And there was an opportunity to really connect the two. And now I'm not sure again. Is it, you know what I mean? Really, if those two things keep following each episode, they should really tie together at some point, right?
Absolutely. And it should feel a bit more like there's mirroring happening so that it feels elegant by the end.
Yes.
And so I think we're in a place now where, it's like there were no Klingons in this episode, so that made me pretty happy.
Yes.
But, that can't last. I'm afraid they're going to come back soon.
They have to.
And you know what is also disappointing is I'm liking all the actors. I'm liking all their work. We're getting all these other actors that were very quiet before that get to say stuff and get to participate.
Even Robot Face is talking.
Exactly, and we're getting in. I'm liking Notaro, and I'm liking Burnham, and I'm liking Saru. Like I'm actually liking these things. It's funny. We just want more of those things, but spread out properly. So you know what I mean?
Yeah,
timed
so
out properly so that
them.
we can get more. Yeah.
Yeah, and Doug Jones was gorgeous
I did cry.
throughout this episode.
I cried.
It was magnificent. There are things you're doing well, Discovery.
Yeah, that's I know. That's what makes it so.
That's what twists the night. It's not just the night's the twist.
I feel like when we go back and look at us talking about this, we're gonna be like, yes, we just want it. You know what I mean? We want it to be good. That's what's so frustrating. And we're not even saying at this point. We're not even saying it's bad. We're just saying, like, break it up.
Yeah.
More and
do what you're doing better.
Yeah, and
it's not like do something different. No, just do what you're doing.
Make it tighter. You know. Yeah.
And maybe this is just the growing pains of building a show, and the fact that they just keep firing showrunners. Maybe they're going to get into a lane, and it would be great. I'd love it if it was a lane that was not widescreen, because again, I'm watching this on iPads or 16:9 screens, and the Kurtzman, it is optimized for no screen this will ever play on.
People are streaming it, so I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. There was something a little bit off about the visuals for me,
it.
and that was it. And I didn't know. I didn't know that
Kurtzman made Star Trek movies. So to him, cinematic means this, as opposed to cinematic meaning good.
It's made to be you're on a streaming site. So
it will never be. It will never be on the big screen.
And it doesn't add anything to it. Why does he think it adds something to it?
In fact, technically, it minuses. It takes away part of the screen. And in this episode, I was thinking, is this a frame that needed to be shot widescreen? There's a joke that goes back to like the 50s when CinemaScope was invented.
Yeah.
And directors were like, what? I film humans, not boa constrictors. I need something that works vertically. There's a reason that Ant-Man is 16:9, because shrinking and growing of humans is a vertical thing. Right. And so you pick the medium and you pick the aspect ratio for the story you're telling, and Kurtzman has done this wrong. Objectively wrong. Star Trek movies go on widescreens. Wide screens. This is not a Star Trek movie. It's going on a 16:9 screen at best. Fix it. Just fix it, guys. Okay.
We want you to succeed.
We want the show to be good. That's the thing. And the thing is, we shoot this in Toronto, and that's the city that Discovery's made. Yeah. Like, they could hear us if we yelled loudly. We're even on the same side of town as they are. If we look out that window, we can almost see the studio. So, we want it to be better, and we believe in these actors. Yeah. We believe in these characters. We believe in the stories.
We're starting to get it. It's we are very close. We're very close to them. I mean, that New Eden episode in that basement is probably in Cabbage Town.
Yeah, exactly.
We're very happy.
And they're shooting in a quarry up in Uxbridge. It's all around where we live and where we work. So we are excited to continue going down this rabbit hole. And next week it's going to be more Orville versus Discovery. We didn't really talk about the Orville at all this week, but next week it's an episode called Deflectors, which from the ad it appears like funny Star Trek, as per usual. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you guys. Funny Star Trek coming up.
Hopefully get that balance right.
And hopefully it's another great one, because sometimes they're not. So we will see you guys next week. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you then.